Rain has a way of stripping life down to its rawest truth, and that morning it soaked everything the men had left. His shoes were thin, his jacket smelled of last night's bus seat, and his stomach ached with a hunger he had learned to ignore. He was a single father sitting in a quiet diner, staring at a plate that held the only breakfast he could afford that day, when he noticed the woman across from him shaking as if the cold had reached her bones. What he did next would ripple through his life in ways he could never have imagined. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of ordinary people doing the right thing, please like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Everyday Heroes. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. The man's name was Daniel, though most people never asked. He was in his mid-30s, with tired eyes and the posture of someone who carried weight long after the load was set down. Since his wife had passed away 2 years earlier, life had narrowed to a routine of survival. He woke before dawn, walked his young daughter to a neighbor who watched her before school, then worked whatever jobs he could find that week. Some days it was construction cleanup, some days unloading trucks, some days nothing at all. Every coin was counted. Every meal was planned. Breakfast at the diner was his one small mercy, a ritual that gave him the strength to face the day. That morning, the woman who caught his attention looked even worse off than he felt. Her hair was damp and clung to her face, her clothes thin and worn, her hands trembling as she tried to sip water. She did not beg or speak. She simply stared at the plate in front of her, empty, as if food were something she had forgotten how to reach. Daniel noticed the way other customers avoided her, how the waitress kept her distance, how the world seemed to agree that this woman was invisible. Daniel thought of his daughter, of the promise he made to her every night that things would be okay. He thought of how hunger felt when it was more than an empty stomach, when it was fear mixed with shame. Without allowing himself time to reconsider, he slid his plate across the table. The toast was still warm. The eggs barely touched. It was his breakfast, his fuel for the day, and he let it go. The woman looked up, startled, her eyes wide with disbelief. Daniel nodded once, embarrassed, and stood before she could say anything. He paid his bill, left a few coins on the table, and walked back into the rain with his stomach empty but his chest strangely lighter. He did not know her name. He did not expect thanks. He simply believed that if he could ease someone else's pain, even for a moment, it was worth the cost. The weeks that followed were harder than usual. Work dried up. Bills stacked on the small kitchen table like accusations. Daniel skipped meals so his daughter could eat, smiling through the hollow feeling in his body. At night, when she slept, he sat in the dark and wondered how long he could keep the walls from closing in. Kindness did not pay rent, and hope did not fill lunchboxes. Still, something inside him had shifted. That morning at the diner stayed with him, not as regret, but as a quiet reminder of who he wanted to be. When the world treated him harshly, he tried to respond gently. When exhaustion pressed down on him, he remembered the look in that woman's eyes when the plate reached her hands. Then one afternoon, everything changed. Daniel returned to his apartment to find two well-dressed strangers waiting by his door. Their posture was formal, their expressions unreadable. For a brief, terrifying moment, Daniel feared the worst. He thought of unpaid bills, of paperwork he could not understand, of systems that crushed people like him without pause. The strangers introduced themselves as lawyers and asked if they could speak with him. Inside his small living room, they explained that they had been searching for him for weeks. The woman from the diner, they said, was not who she appeared to be. She had once been a successful business owner, a philanthropist known quietly for funding shelters and scholarships. A sudden betrayal by someone she trusted had left her financially devastated, emotionally broken, and briefly homeless. She had disappeared by choice, cutting ties with everyone she knew, testing whether the world would still show her kindness when she had nothing. That morning in the diner had been her lowest point. When Daniel gave her his breakfast, he did not know he was being observed by more than fate. The woman never forgot him. With help from distant family, she rebuilt her life, reclaimed what was taken from her, and then set out to find the men who fed her when no one else would. Daniel listened in stunned silence as the lawyers explained that she wanted to help him. Not as charity, they emphasized, but as gratitude. She had asked them to deliver legal documents establishing a trust in his name, funds set aside for his daughter's education, and assistance to secure stable housing and employment. The amount was life-changing, but the intent was what shook him most. She wanted his life to change because he had once changed hers. Daniel struggled to accept it. Pride wrestled with disbelief. He was not a hero, he insisted. He was just a father who made a simple choice. The lawyers smiled gently, explaining that simple choices were often the ones that mattered most. As the days unfolded, Daniel's world transformed in quiet, steady ways. He moved his daughter into a safer apartment near a good school. He enrolled in a training program that offered real prospects instead of temporary relief. For the first time since his wife's passing, the future felt like something he could plan for, not just survive. Yet the greatest change was not financial. It was internal. Daniel began to understand that kindness was not a transaction but a current, flowing from one life to another, returning in forms no one could predict. The woman from the diner never asked to meet him again. She did not want recognition or public praise. Her lawyers delivered her message simply, that she hoped he would continue living the way he already did. Daniel did. He volunteered when he could. He helped neighbors without expecting anything in return. He taught his daughter that even when they had little, they always had enough to share compassion. The memory of that rainy morning became a cornerstone of his identity, proof that even the smallest light could pierce the darkest hours. As this story draws close, pause for a moment and look inward. If this journey moved you, if it reminded you that humanity still survives in quiet corners of the world, please engage with this video. Like it, share it, and subscribe to Everyday Heroes so more stories of real compassion can be told. And before the ending, we have a special request for you. Please comment below and tell us what kindness means to you, or share a moment when a small act changed your life. Your words may inspire someone who is struggling right now. Daniel never became famous. His name never trended. But somewhere, a woman slept warm because he gave up his breakfast, and a little girl grew up believing that goodness was not a myth. In a world often loud with cruelty, his story whispers a truth that still matters, that kindness given freely has a way of finding its way home, multiplied, when it is needed most.